Alright, so you saw on the other part, I got the engine running, and today I was kind of doing a fitness for water once over, kind of checking a bunch of stuff, making sure we'd be watertight, and I came across a pretty big problem that's going to hold me up quite a bit. So if you look down here, you see that bolt that looks like it's kind of punched through the fiberglass. That is the bottom mounting bolt for the stern drive that is normally supposed to have a nut that is flush with the fiberglass, and it is securing the bottom of the transom, or securing the bottom of the stern drive to the transom. What that means is the transom is rotted out, at least at the bottom half. And that's pretty unfortunate, because now in order to fix that, I'm going to have to pull the engine and separate the stern drive on both halves from the back of the boat. It's not going to be too expensive to do in this boat. As you can kind of see, where this ridge is the transom plate. So the idea is I'm going to come in here, cut the fiberglass along that edge all the way around, you know, and down underneath, after I pull the engine out, of course, and then chip away all the rotted wood, and it should come out relatively easily. If not, I can chunk it away, but hopefully it just comes out pretty easy. And I think the more that I'm kind of pressing into it, that's flexing, and it shouldn't. So it's pretty rotted all the way through, I think. I was just disappointed to see it, because I saw, you know, things like this which were still in good shape, and you know that usually rots through if the transom rots through. And everything looked like it had pretty heavy fresh caulk on it, so I was thinking, you know, maybe they always just kept up on it, but they were probably just putting that caulk on because it was starting to leak, and I'm guessing it leaks pretty bad, so I'm not even going to test it before I replace this transom. Unfortunately, though, it's a lot of work, so I'm going to have to pull the motor out. They're not that hard to pull out on these boats. You got your water tube, your exhaust tube, you unhook the tilt trim, you unhook the battery main, the harness main, negative main. There's another one back here you got to unhook for the negative. Your two shift cables, and then on this side, your throttle cable. And then there's 3 mounting screws that actually hold the engine in. 1, 2, and then 3 right back there. So you pull all that apart, it should, you know, lift off just like a normal engine does. You get a engine lift. I've got a chain fall over there, which I'll use. Pull the engine up and out, and then I'll have access to be able to, there's 6 screws to hold that on to the transom. It looks like maybe 4 now. So pull the nuts off of that, undo your tilt trim motor unit back here, pull that through the hole. This steering cable, you want to make sure you flip that out of the way. There's a couple of wires for like the tilt trim sender, and then maybe there's something else I got to look at a little bit closer. But so I got pretty much everything ready for the engine removal and transom repair. I'm gonna head over to lumber store later and get some 1-inch ply here in a little bit. As you can see, I kind of got everything pulled off the back. I think I'm gonna relocate this hole up so they're level. But the speedo was broken, as I found out. The board-on tube was busted at the base, so I'll replace that. I think the tube's fine. Took everything else off, and then I went and polished up the threads. So the tow hook looks like brand new. My tie downs looking like brand new. And on the inside, I stripped all the cables and wires off of the engine. So everything's disconnected. Bolts are all loose. All you gotta do now is lift it up. And alright, so I got the engine pulled out. A little bit trickier than I thought. My chain fall's not quite as tall as I was hoping. Even though I got it real tight to the block, I probably could have taken a link out right there and made a little bit of help for me, but that was tricky to get out. Problem is the edge is too tall for how much height I have to lift from. So what I had to do is put that jack under the middle bar here, I think, and underneath that support, the roller support, jack it all the way up as high as it could go, then deflate this tire all the way down. So the trailer doing like this, and it finally got low enough there that I was able to swing the arm up past. Next up, remove the, I think there's 6 bolts that hold these two pieces together, and then the steering linkage. So take those off, and this part should come off this way. The outside part will fall through, and then I gotta fish the motor here through the hole, and that should be about it. Well, it came out alright. The only hiccup I found was the top 2 were both sheared off. Those are bolts, and the rest of them were nuts. So all the nuts came off just fine, but those top 2, they just weren't twisting, and it sheared. So I'll have to extract those, I'm sure, at great difficulty. The transom, pretty bad, right? I mean, that's pretty nasty. It even started to crack through the outside, so I'll have to kind of grind into that to make sure it's all sealed up with epoxy. Something I messed up on here is this is 1.5 inch, and I bought a piece of 1 inch thinking that it wasn't going to be that thick. But my solution for that is to simply just glue another 1/2 inch onto the outside of that. So it will be 1.5 inches, because plywood's basically glued plywood, or glued layers anyway. So I have 1 inch they already bought. You know, as you can see, this is glued layers. I know it's not marine ply. I'm going to seal it. It's going to be completely epoxy sealed, so it will be waterproofed. And the boat's going to be a flip anyway, so I don't need to be spending all kinds of crazy money. But I got more of this 1/2 inch, and it's AC plywood too, so it's not marine ply, but it, you know, next best thing I have over here. So I'll put a piece of 1/2 inch in front. I'll zip them together. I'll epoxy it completely in between the two with a little bit of this 403 microfiber filler. This stuff really glues things together pretty strong, so I'll make a pretty hot batch between those two. So I'm cutting this fiberglass out, and I came up to an interesting discovery. There's a fiberglass layer in the middle of this board. So what it actually is, there's a piece of 1 inch that goes across the entire back, and then they glued another 1/2 inch on top of it. Just like I was discussing doing, is exactly what they did, and they put a piece of fiberglass sheet in the middle. That gives me a little more credibility to my idea. I feel a little bit better in it, and also makes for a little bit interesting method of removal. I think I'm going to actually cut all the way back, and when I cut the 1 inch piece, I will just extend it all the way to that corner on both sides, so that way I have, as was original, the full 1 inch backing. Okay, so I have the transom put back in. I got it painted, a little bit of spray black, matte black in there to freshen it up. I think it turned out pretty good. I did a 1/2 inch over the entire thing, And then I did a 1-inch over the center portion there, which is very, very similar to how it was before. Then fiberglass over the entire thing. Reinforced a couple of the spots where bolts are going to go through. Epoxied the hell out of all of the gaps and holes and things like that I missed. And I also replaced the front engine mount. Fiberglass the entire top surface, and triple layered it where the support itself is going to go in. So that should be just as strong as it was from the factory. I will now wait for everything to dry and then re-drill some holes. I epoxy filled them just so I could ensure everything to be nice and centered the way that I want them to be. And like where the swim platform used to be, I epoxied those holes. A couple of them needed more epoxy. I mean, they might take another coat again, but once the stern drive is all dried up, I'll be able to remount stuff. And then sand everything, make it flat, make it pretty, go from there. But yeah, we've been having some pretty good progress, and glad to see we're getting to the end. We're ready to put the engine back in here fairly soon. Oh, I also replaced that board. It should be obvious the difference in fiberglass design. It was rotted out. I think it's where the blower hose screws into, so that got wet and, you know, rotted it out. But new now. Should be like brand new boat.